Juventus are once again at the center of controversy. Juventus fans know this feeling all too well. And after Calciopoli, we didn't expect the club to make another mistake. However, after what seemed to have been a closed trial, the FIGC have given Juventus a 15-point deduction due to false accounting and creating inflated transfer fees to generate capital gains. And while Juventus were not the only ones involved in this, cough cough, 8 other teams were as well, Juventus unfortunately were the main targets in this investigation. In this video, I will talk about how the investigations went, and I will explain some of the main points in which led to the punishment. This is another dark day for Juventus and for the whole of Serie A. While rival fans and fans from other leagues will rejoice at the downfall of Juventus, this is not a time to celebrate. And if you are a Juventino, I feel your pain. As a Juventino through and through, I was born outside of Torino, and I have experienced the highs and lows of what it is to be a Juventino. So let's start this journey. Now, before I start, I'm going to explain what plusvalenza is for the non-Italian speakers. What is plusvalenza? For short, it's capital gains. The reason it's so popular currently in Italy is due to the pandemic, given clubs had to generate revenue due to the closed stadiums, canceled matches, and the economy. So how did this all happen, and why are Juventus the only team that was singled out even though 8 other teams were being investigated? Let's start from the beginning. Back in 2021, the COVISOC, which stands for La Commissione di Vigilanza sulle Società di Calcio Professionistiche, or in English, the Supervisory Commission of Professional Football Clubs, informed the FIGC, the Italian Football Federation, of possible capital gains using inflated valuations of players. Paolo Boccardelli, the head of the COVISOC, was advised to start an investigation of transfer market dealings in Italy. He raised a very valid point when he said the following: identifying the fair value for the performance of a professional athlete is notoriously a difficult task and not supported by an adequate level of scientific evidence. This quote raises a very valid point, which many fans of the sport probably agree with. It is hard to determine the value of a player, but if we are going to keep it simple, a player's value is determined by what another club is willing to pay for that player. This led to the FIGC taking a look into the fees that involved 62 signings. The COVISOC flagged 62 player transfers across 2 seasons, with 42 of them being deals involving Juventus. Of the 42 transfers, 36 involved little-known athletes from the reserves and youth team. While Juventus were not the only club being investigated, they had the majority of the eyes looking at them. Specifically, 2 large swaps involving Manchester City and Barcelona were also under scrutiny. Back in 2019, Juventus and Manchester City came to an agreement on a swap involving Joao Cancelo and Danilo. Due to the differences in valuation, Juventus also received 28 million euros on top of Danilo. Juventus and City also made another swap deal with 2 young players, Felix Correa heading to Juventus while Pablo Moreno was heading to City for 10 million euros each, with both clubs having a 10% sell-on clause. The other deal that authorities were focusing on was a swap between Juventus and Barcelona that involved Miralem Pjanic and Arthur Melo for a combined transfer fee of around 130 million euros. Along with this swap, Juventus made a similar deal involving Barcelona's young forward Alejandro Marquez, while Juventus sent Mateus Pereira to Barcelona. Now, these 2 high-profile transfers were only some of the reasons the authorities were looking into Juventus. However, the deal that sparked the authorities' interest wasn't even involving Juventus. It was Napoli's acquisition of Victor Osimhen. Napoli signed Osimhen back in 2020 for a reported fee of 72 million euros, Napoli's largest ever purchase in their history. At the time of the transfer, Osimhen was a rising talent but was still relatively unknown while playing for Lille. This deal is a lot more concerning and raises quite a few more red flags. Lille received 4 different players in this transfer, which accounted for 20 million euros, which allowed Napoli to ease their financial fair play obligations by registering incoming transfer fees. The 4 players included in this deal were Carnesis, which is the only player of the group to have appeared in a match for Lille, Ciro Palmieri, Luigi Ligorio, and Claudio Manzi. At the time of their sales, the young players were earning between 5,000 and 10,000 euros a month month. Ciro Palmieri is currently playing for SS Nola 1925, a Serie A D team, after being released by Lille. Luigi Liguri plays for Casoria Calcio 1979 in a semi-professional league. And finally, Claudio Manzi plays for a Serie C team. In November 2021, police from Italy's Guardia di Finanza raided Juventus's headquarters, seizing documents and information to compile their case. Prosecutors alleged that the club's losses were far higher than they had declared in the 3 seasons from 2018 to 2020, with a loss of 239 million euros in 2019 rather than the stated figure of 89 million euros. Authorities claimed that Juventus made artificial capital gains through these deals. Juventus, also in agreement with their players, were able to save 90 million euros due to a wage reduction for the month of March, April, May, and June of 2020. This agreement came about due to the impact of the pandemic. However, authorities claim that Juventus only waived 1 month of the documented 4. Due to Juventus being listed on the Euronext stock exchange, the CONSOB, Italy's financial regulator, took part in the investigation. Juventus stood their ground and maintained their innocence throughout this all. In April 2022, the FIGC cleared Juventus and the other clubs involved. The prosecutors were referring to information from Transfer Market regarding players' valuations. However, while the FIGC cleared Juventus, there was another investigation ongoing. Prisma, launched by the Public Prosecutor's Office, the Court of Turin, were looking into allegations of false accounting, false financial statements, and market manipulation. On November 28, 2002, the entire board of directors, including President Andrea Agnelli, Vice President Pavel Nedved, and CEO Maurizio Arrivabene, resigned amidst an ongoing investigation regarding false accounting. Juventus went on to say the following: the accounting treatment adopted in the contested file statements falls within those allowed by applicable accounting principles. Juventus FC remains convinced that it has always acted correctly and intends to assert its reasons and defends its corporate, economic, and sporting interests in all forms. 3 days after the entire board of directors resigned, Italian prosecutors requested that former Juventus chairman Andrea Agnelli and 11 others stand trial over allegations of false accounting. Juventus denied any wrongdoing and released a statement saying, Juventus FC remains convinced that it has always acted correctly. Italian authorities claim that the club understated their financial losses for 3 seasons, 2018 to 2019, 2019 to 2020, and 2020 to 21. Authorities looked into the values of players between clubs as well as the salaries that were given up during COVID-19 from the players. Juventus recorded a loss of 254.3 million euros in the 2020-21 season, a record for the highest loss in Serie A. On Wednesday, January 18th, Juventus held a board meeting appointing Gianluca Ferrero as chairman, Maurizio Scanavino as CEO. On Friday, January 20th, after an original request of a 9-point deduction to be handed to Juventus, they instead were given a 15-point deduction, which drops them from 3rd place all the way to 10th. Along with the point deduction, 11 past and present Juventus directors were handed bans in Italy. Fabio Paratici, now director at Tottenham, 30-month ban. Andrea Agnelli, former chairman, 24-month ban. Maurizio Arrivabene, former CEO, 24-month ban. Federico Cherubini, current director, 16-month ban. Pavel Nedved, former vice president, 8-month ban. And so on and so forth. The 8 other clubs, Sampdoria, Pro Vercelli, Genoa, Parma, Pisa, Empoli, Novara, and Pescara, were all acquitted of any wrongdoing. So what's next? Well, just like any other situation that has involved Juventus, they will come back stronger. This team has always been the target of controversy, and the league, as well as Italy, continue to thrive off pointing the finger at Juventus. The club is going to appeal the decision. However, the damage has been done. I personally do not see this punishment being reversed, and it is really time for Juventus to roll up their sleeves and move forward. Calciopoli has to be the darkest time as a Juventino, and while this case isn't as severe, the witch hunt for Juventus will continue forever. As fans, we need to stay united and hope that the players can make a statement on the pitch. We as Juventini need to continue to support our team. Being a Juventino isn't for everybody. Forza Juve fino alla fine. Remember those words.